Welcome along on this Christmas Eve special to the state of Scottish football. If you couldn't tell it was Christmas, to take a look at our festive jumpers and the happy smiley faces. The reindeer already have their carrots out. There's a glass of milk and cookies for Santa. And joining you for some Scottish football talk is myself, Colin, David to my left, and down the bottom we've got Glenn. We've been part of the state of Scottish football team since the start of this season, and with it coming up to Christmas, it was about time we did a Christmas special. And what other way to do it than to pick our team of the year from 2021? Now, we'll get to that very shortly, and since the last time we were on air, it has been confirmed that the Cinch Premiership will shut down as of Boxing Day. So Boxing Day is the last set of fixtures. Glenn, do you think that was the right decision considering what's going on in the world at the moment and the fact that these games would have unfortunately been played theoretically behind closed doors?
I think it's the right decision, but personally, I would have also liked to see the Boxing Day games postponed as well, rather than played with just a limited crowd of 500. I understand the decision that why the SPFL board preferred the Boxing Day game to go ahead, because obviously it's a tight league this season in terms of refitting in games with the Winter World Cup coming up next year. But it's just not going to be the same. The fixture calendar is always the games everybody looks forward to most. And I just think 500 fans, I'm still patiently waiting on a call from the club to see if I'll be one of the lucky ones that get a ticket along to Pittodrie. But I think Dave Cormack's even pleased that the deadline's extended to midnight on Boxing Day to allow these full crowds. Will probably fall on deaf ears. But look, something had to be done to contain the spread, and I'm glad there's been some show of common sense in Scottish football for a change.
Yeah, Dave, as Glenn says, common sense has finally prevailed. It's a rarity in Scottish football.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, by all accounts, this was going to be a foregone conclusion with regards to not playing games in Boxing Day. But I was looking at an interview with Neil Doncaster on Sky Sports this morning, and he was kind of saying that Ron Glory put this proposal across for teams playing on Boxing Day. It's been a good resolution from Ron Gordon's perspective, and clubs will have to deal with obviously playing 500 on Boxing Day. There's obviously some big games for some clubs. I mean, you've got Dundee, St John's, got Celtic, so there's some big games in there. And I was at the St Johnstone Ross County game last night. There was only 2,400 people, so St Johnstone don't exactly get big attendances as anyway. But common sense has prevailed, and it's an opportunity for some clubs to end the year, calendar year on a high, and then the next year start afresh.
And when you look at it, these games have been rescheduled already. The dates are already out. Celtic will play Hibs in the first game back on Monday, the 17th of January. But the big ones that kind of stick out there is the derbies, Glenn. You've got the Edinburgh Derby on the 3rd of February, the Glasgow Derby on the 2nd of February, both games midweek games. It's not very often we get the derbies through the week, and I think it just adds that extra bit of spice to them.
A bit of spice, but I suppose, some fans might be affected by travel and having to take additional time off of work now as a result of the fixtures that would have been during a holiday period, or certainly the derbies, especially as you've highlighted there, being when people would have been off and easy to attend. It is going to affect some people, but yeah, the derby games and big games coming up under the lights always just adds a bit of extra atmosphere.
And Dave, I guess the hope is that in 3 weeks' time, when we all reconvene, then we will see, if not a full house, at least a substantial amount of people back through the turnstiles getting back into Scottish football.
Yeah, well, Glenn will understand this saying, but the Dundee Derby also takes place on the 1st of February, and the 2nd of February will be a Tory holiday for a lot of people in Dundee. So, yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. But I'm going to flip the coin in a minute. But first and foremost, if we can get some sort of normality with regards to crowds back on the 17th of January, that's a massive bonus for all the clubs in Scottish football, because all the clubs will come at a cost. This will come at a cost to a lot of clubs, because there's also a lot of repercussions financially for the clubs in terms of getting players tested and obviously trying to get people bumps and seats at the crowds again by the time we resume action in January. But I'll flip the other side of the coin. Marky McKay was speaking after the game last night, calling Glenn, and he was of the opinion that he doesn't think crowds will be back. And I can acknowledge and understand where he's coming from, but here's hoping Nicola Sturgeon does see some sense and we can see some crowds again as of January. But whether that's going to happen, time will tell.
Well, all we can hope for is for the best, and we'll see what the position is like in a couple of weeks' time. But instead of looking forward, let's look back to the year that was 2021. Now, in terms of Scottish football, what a year it was. We finally made it onto the grand stage of the European Championships. Let's not discuss the results, but we'll always have that night at Wembley. Celtic's reign of dominance in Scottish football was finally ended when Steven Gerrard's Rangers lifted the cinch. Well, not the cinch, it was just the SPFL Premiership at that point. Unbelievably, that would be his only trophy in Scottish football as he departed for Aston Villa. And Callum Davidson was the man on everyone's lips as he led St Johnstone to a cup double. Less said about how they're performing this season, the better probably, but he was the man of the moment. Guys, I'm going to come to you both for your highlight in Scottish football in 2021. And Dave, I'll come to you first.
Scotland have had a tremendous year on the international stage. And for me, there's been a lot of fantastic games and a lot of fantastic performances under Scotland this year. But for me, the recent Denmark game has got to be up there. So Scotland v Denmark and the fantastic performance and result for Scotland is up there for me.
What about yourself, Glenn? What was your highlight within Scottish football for 2021?
I think you're right to give St Johnstone an honourable mention for their achievements, but for me, my personal highlight isn't actually the Denmark game. It's the game a couple before that. It's that Israel game in the Scott McTominay header. That being in front of a full Hampden, the first time the Scotland men's team had probably played at a sold-out Hampden in too many years. And a long time coming, and just to have that moment of joy, ecstasy in a full stadium, it just felt like football had been back. I know we've just been speaking about football being kind of taken away from large crowds, but that was just such a special moment for all the things that come with supporting a team or the national team, and just was such a kind of sense of relief and emotion all summed up in one last gasp from Scott McTominay.
I guess it does show you how far the national team has come over the last couple of years, that both the two of you have chosen international moments, not anything from your team that you support, your club team. Maybe we'll get into the reasons why on that later on, but it does show, I mean, for years, Scotland was a country that was embarrassed of their national team, to say the least. Performances were abject misery, but now under Steve Clarke, it does look as if things are going in the right trajectory. You're seeing Hampden sold out for every game. It's a proud thing now to support the national team, and long may that continue. I'd have to say, though, for me, my personal highlight of Scottish football this season, and I've got to go with a selfish one for myself. It was, for me, and I'll admit this as a Celtic fan, getting back into Celtic Park after 17 months out, leaving the last game in March 2020 against St Mirren, a 5-0 victory, and then not realising that it would be another 17 months before you step through the turnstiles once again. That moment, I don't think anybody that was at that game will forget it, or anybody who's been back to the first game since this outbreak took place. There is something to be said about how football's more than just a game. And I think the three of us all agree that it's a huge part of our lives. It's a huge part of many people's lives. And that's one of the reasons why I hope this kind of lockdown of fans doesn't last too long, because the impact it will have on so many people's mental health, the fact that they're missing what is their Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, whatever day it is, day out. But I do hope that if you do have the opportunity, get yourself along to a local team, get yourself along to some junior games, support your local clubs. and get your football fix then, and hopefully it'll only be 3 weeks until everything is back to normal.
Yeah, and on that point, Colin, sorry, the for those maybe listening in the north of the country, the Highland League have confirmed that it will be business as usual. I think the Championship, League One and League Two are still going to continue, but as you've touched on there in terms of juniors, Lowland League, and that Highland League are still going to continue. So yeah, I just want to echo that sentiment of getting along. I know Dave, you were recently at a local Highland League club's games, but yeah, definitely go along and get your football fix there, because they are enjoyable games, even though it might not be the level you're used to watching.
And as I said, it's Christmas time. It's the time for giving. So hopefully you will get something back from your experience. Let's get away from this soppiness. Let's get into the main talking point today. It is the team of the year. Now, this team has been selected by the contributors here at the State of Scottish Football. In total, there is 14 of us. And if you would like to be involved as a contributor next year, then get in touch with us. It's Paul at astateofmind.media, and we'll see if we can get you scheduled in to come on if you love all things Scottish football, just like Glenn and David did earlier on in the season. And despite the looks on their faces right now, they promise they've never looked back since. There's two really simple rules when we were choosing these teams. The first one is that you could only pick a maximum of 3 players from the one team. So there wasn't going to be a Celtic Rangers divide in here. It wasn't going to be a full team of one particular set of players. It had to be a maximum of 3 players from the one team. And the second rule is that they had to have played in Scotland in the top flight in the year of 2021. So you will see a couple of players that have moved on from Scottish football, and you may see some that have only been here 6 months, but it does show you the impact that these players have had. And if there was a transfer between 2 teams, then the team that they finish the season with is the team that counts towards the maximum of 3. So that is how we decided the team. Everybody submitted their own teams. We will be unveiling our own teams after part 2 of this special. But first of all, let's start with the goalkeeper. And I have to say, it was almost unanimous. The only person who did not pick this goalkeeper was Jenna Thompson, and Jenna will have a lot of explaining to do, or maybe it was just a bit of club affiliation in her sense. But the State of Scottish Football goalkeeper of 2021 was Craig Gordon. Now, Glenn, they often say that a footballer has a second chance playing football, get a second wind, a second life. Craig Gordon at Hearts seems to have found a third life, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's come into a league of his own almost this season in terms of the form, not just for Hearts, but also for Scotland, finding himself back as the national team's number 1. We saw some of the saves that he's pulled off for the national team, but also for Hearts. He's kept them in games. He's won them games. I just think back to some of the saves he pulled off in that first half against Livingston more recently. But yeah, fair play to Craig, because after his time at Celtic, he was probably a bit written off with his time down in the Championship. But he's bounced back brilliantly, and so have Hearts in their first season back in the Scottish Premiership. But yeah, I think it was an overwhelming choice for most of us in our team of the year. And once again, Xander Clark probably scratching his head, wondering what he's got to do to become number 1 somewhere in everyone else's choice.
Well, I was the only mug who picked a bench. I spent far too much time going through this, and he was my bench goalkeeper, was Xander Clark. But Dave, when you look at Craig Gordon, obviously he took that risk, went down to the Championship, back to his boyhood club at Hearts. And at the time of recording this, Hearts are currently 3rd in the league. And a lot of that's come down to the performances that Craig Gordon's put in. And quite rightly now, he's back as Scotland's number 1 goalkeeper.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been a terrific 2021 for Craig Gordon. Some terrific performances for Hearts, and he's probably been an instrumental part in terms of why Hearts are third in that league at this precise moment in time, because across the park they don't have too much. They're a very good, strong side, but they don't have too much creative players. So Craig Gordon's probably played his part in terms of Hearts finishing third right this precise moment in time, but also for Scotland, as you right and truly say there. He's had some terrific, outstanding performances for Scotland as well, and helped Scotland towards some fantastic wins and fantastic results over the course of this year. So, Craig Gordon for me. I was actually tempted to go for Xander Clark after seeing some of the fine performances that he's put in, but Craig Gordon gets the carrot for me.
Carrot at Christmas goes to Craig Gordon, not to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Although, considering sometimes when you see Craig Gordon playing football, when he's not got a lot to do, that wee face does end up cold, and he does have a wee red nose, so maybe that's quite apt. As we said, Jenna was the only one not to pick Craig Gordon. She went for her very own Motherwell keeper, Liam Kelly. I mean, I've got to say, Liam Kelly, I think, did have a very impressive 2021 as well. But when you look at it, Glenn, I don't think there was much choice beyond Craig Gordon.
No, and I've always been kind of the same when it comes to national team. They tend to pick three keepers. I would have had it as Gordon, Clark, and then probably Liam Kelly. So he wouldn't even come into my consideration if it wasn't for Craig Gordon. I think it's for, as we've discussed, kind of the whole of 2021, and I think it's fair to say Craig Gordon's probably kept that level of consistency right through the year.
Absolutely. Now we're going to get into our back four, and starting at right back, it's not Sean Rooney who comes in second. It is the Premiership winning captain, James Tavernier, who comes in with 12 out of the 14 votes. Dave, when you look at it, Tavernier, he led Rangers by example last year, goes on to win the title. He's constantly popping up with goals, whether it be from penalty decisions that we can get into at a later debate, but he is leading that team by example, and I think he's very, very worthy of his position at right back in this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's had a great year. I mean, he was instrumental under Gerrard in terms of winning the Premiership. Indeed, the only trophy that Gerrard won in his tenure at the club. And then, obviously, Van Bronckhorst took the reins at Ibrox, and Tavernier's been a massive help to Van Bronckhorst in terms of his early tenure and how things are going at this precise moment in time, because Rangers are getting results, and they're not getting results by playing fantastic, attractive football. They're getting results by being workmanlike and being that solid foundation that they are. So, yeah, absolutely, Tavernier deserves a place in this team, and justifiably so.
Now, Glenn, we spoke about this before we started. You're only allowed 3 players from each team, so it is becoming a difficult selection as you go through it. But the fact that 12 out of the 14 contributors picked James Tavernier as their right back, that shows how important he was to that Rangers side last season.
Yeah, he was massively important to that Rangers side, not just because of the leadership qualities he obviously possesses, but as you've rightly said, the goals he brings, whether that's penalties, set plays, free kicks, he was quite deadly with. I remember a goal he scored from a free kick at Tannadice last season, that sticks out. But also his assists as well. He's a constant threat down that wing for Rangers. And yeah, those of you that maybe play fantasy football will have known just how an important asset he was, and probably in many teams last season. So I think it's no surprise that he makes the team of the year on a state of Scottish football.
Yeah, and I think for the FIFA players amongst us, you'll know that if you got a James Tavernier right back team of the season, then he was a very, very worthy addition. So yeah, James Tavernier and Craig Gordon, that is our goalkeeper and right back. Now, as we said, you can only pick 3 players from the one team. So I wonder how much this comes into the rest of our back 4. One of our first centre backs is Craig Gordon's teammate, John Souttar, who picked up 9 out of the 14 votes. Dave, he's worked his way back from injury hell, dropped down to the Championship, the same as Craig Gordon, and the same as Craig Gordon finds himself back in amongst the international fold. He's only, 24, 25? He could still have a big career ahead of him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's had a great season so far, and he's been earmarked for Scotland call-ups, and he's been doing well in terms of club and country at this precise moment in time, and he'll be looking to keep that going moving forward. I mean, he's the injury scared that possibly backtrack his career to an extent, but for him to go put in the performances he did is very good. Apologies for bringing this up, Colin, but he did have a fantastic display in opening day in the season at Tynecastle, beating Celtic 2-1. Scored one of the goals in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, it's back in August. Sorry, obviously it's back in August in my brain. is obviously fast forwarding now, but he had a fantastic performance in that night in question, and he's just went on and delivered more good performances ever since then, and been a massive help in terms of Hearts currently in their league table position in the third place.
So, Glenn, thankfully there still is time to make sure that Dave is on Santa's naughty list after that. Whilst I give him a phone, would you have picked John Souttar if there was no restrictions for selection? We were saying obviously you can only pick 3 per team. If that wasn't a rule, do you still think John Souttar would be in this team?
Well, I actually was one of the 5 that never made my own team. I know that's a bit of a spoiler for episode 2, but I actually didn't appreciate his age until you just revealed it there. I thought he was kind of a bit later on in his career, which just shows, kind of the suffering he's had in terms of injuries. He's a player that I didn't always rate in his early days at Hearts, and he's certainly a player that's worked hard to get back to where he is, and obviously he's done well this season, getting onto the international stage, and very well documented with that goal as well in his fight back. If it hadn't been for the rules, I don't think he would have been in the team, though, in answer to your question.
If it wasn't for the rules, who do you think would have been the first, the most popular centre-back choice of the season?
See, this is going to be a strange one because I'm not sure how often he played at centre-back. But I actually was always a big fan of Christopher Ajer, but had he been fit consistently, I think Christopher Julian would have been in that team ahead of John Souttar.
Christopher Julian, the forgotten man at Celtic, has been out for the best part of a year after slide tackling a goalpost. Now, John Souttar, as we said, is still quite young, got a lot of time to develop, and hopefully he stays injury-free. But the player that is alongside him is someone who is no longer in the league, but it does show the impression that he made over the first 6 months of the year. And we mentioned this earlier on. He comes from the double cup winning side of St Johnstone. John Souttar's partner at centre-half is Jason Kerr. Jason Kerr picked up 8 votes. And when you look at it in the reflection, Dave, is a massive loss to St Johnstone this season because they've never really been able to go over the kind of centre-back partnership that both him and McCart had, and they find themselves sitting bottom of the table.
Yeah, I mean, St Johnstone were renowned the last season and in the early stages of this season of having a good, solid defensive base about them, but they're conceding goals for fun right now. And last night, when recording this, of course, was another disappointing outcome. Obviously, losing 2-1 to Ross County, but I mean, Jason Kerr played an instrumental part in St Johnstone picking up that elusive double that nobody expected St Johnstone to go and do. I mean, the League Cup final was fantastic in that game. Obviously, scoring. No, he didn't score against Leicester, but he did a fantastic display against Leicester, beg your pardon, and then obviously played another vital role in that cup final against Hibs. Obviously, Sean Rooney just missed out in that right back position, and there was a bit of clamour. I've forgotten who it was by. It was on the group chat, obviously, but somebody suggested Rooney should have been in the centre half, but I didn't quite materialise. So, Jason Kerr, understandably and deservedly, in this team for 2021.
Right, Glenn, explain yourself.
Well, because I couldn't have Sean Rooney at right back because I had James Tavernier in there instead, I was giving a nod to both of the cup-winning defenders from St Johnstone, and including Kurt and Rooney. And to shoehorn in my left back, Rooney had to go in at centre half, which was obviously highlighted the fact that he hasn't been performing great this season at centre back, but for what he did last season, popped up at vital times with vital goals in that cup run. That's why he had made it in as a centre half to my team.
So when you look at it though, Glenn, Jason Kerr departed St Johnstone, goes down south, pretty much a nominal fee in the end. That's something I think St Johnstone didn't capitalise on, was the success of winning both trophies, getting into Europe, having a full McDermott Park. They still let the players go for what I believe was criminally low fees.
But I think that's a Scottish football problem as a whole. It's not just a necessarily St Johnstone issue. It's maybe the nature of the beast after the year that we've had with, clubs suffering financially, that they had to take what was on the table at the last minute. Unfortunately, I think that did kind of shoot them in the foot a bit. That left them no time to replace these guys. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, Colin, and they're probably ruining the mistakes of letting Jason Kerr and Ali McCann go for such poor fees.
Before we reveal who the last player is to make the first half of the Team of the Year, there's some honourable mentions for some of the picks. Let's start with Connor Goldson. Now, another member of that Rangers title-winning team. He was solid at the back for them. I think he won Rangers Player of the Year last year as well. David, he was one that popped up the goals at important points and was part of the reason why Rangers' defence last season was so solid.
Yeah, he's been exposed a little bit, if I'm going to be honest with you, this side of the calendar year. But in terms of the other side in which you're alluding to, he was fantastic under Gerrard in that first half of the calendar year where he picked up the Player of the Year and helped Rangers in terms of getting the league wrapped up and sewed up by March. And then even from March onwards, he still had some pretty good performances, which helped obviously Rangers achieve the undefeated run that they did in the season. Also, there was a bit of disappointment from Rangers' perspective that they could beat St Johnstone. If I'm not mistaken, they might have Goldson might have been marking Xander Clark for that elusive header, but I might be wrong there. But I mean, Colin Goldson, irrespective, has had a very good year and deservedly, not deservedly in this team. I forgot. I was just waiting to milk it there. Apologies. I was waiting to say he's had a very good year. Sorry, and what the future lies for him, time will tell. He's out of contract end of the season. There's a lot lying in wait for the man now.
Another honourable mention is someone that if you told me this in January, we'd be giving him an honourable mention. I'd be saying, which league are we covering? It's Anthony Ralston, Glenn. He's came back with a complete bang at Celtic. He's got himself into the national side, and I'll hold my hands up. He's proven me absolutely wrong. He's done me dirty.
Yeah, he's probably had your tweets pinned up on the inside of his locker at Lennoxtown as motivation every day, but fair play to Tony Ralston for what he's done. And I think it shows why he's been picked. But obviously, that's primarily what he's done on this season. As Dave mentions, Goldson are unlucky to miss out. And I think, what Dave says is right, because maybe Goldson's had a few mistakes that have crept into his game. Well, Ralston's done the opposite of that. He's almost cut out the mistakes he was maybe renowned for in his times. And he's popped up with goals this season as well, and assists. Obviously, we saw recently the vital goal he scored late on up in Dingwall. And yeah, he's just developed into a bit of an all-round asset, and he's forcing Juranovic to be played out of position because he's made that right-back place at Celtic his own so far this season.
Yeah, and I did send him an apology tweet, but I'm not blocked, so I guess that means that we can maybe one day be pals. Look, there's another couple of honourable mentions, guys like Mugabe at Motherwell, who's had a great start to the season as well. But we are kind of running out of time here, and we do have one position still left to cover. It is the left-back position, and it goes to young Josh Doig of Hibs. He picked up 9 of the votes. It was very close between him and Barisic of Rangers. Between the two of you, who would you have went for?
Well, I went for Doig, I think, and I think, Glenn, you went for Barisic, did you?
Yeah. So
let's hear the arguments on both sides then.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll start. I only voted for Doig for one precise reason, because I interviewed him last month. Nothing else. I'll call this the football friends argument.
Oh, friends!
Yeah. And I went for Barisic because I think Josh Doig, in my personal opinion, is quite overrated. I haven't seen much. Admittedly, I don't watch Hibs week in, week out to see what he offers. And from what Barisic did last season, obviously being part of that title-winning side, produced goals at vital times for Rangers, and again also popping up with assists. In terms of him as an all-round player, that's why I went for Barisic over Doig.
I think there are two players that had a very good first 6 months of the year, first 6 half of the year, however way that works. But I don't think they've quite lived up to it in the second half of 2021. And it'll be interesting to see how the second half of this season goes in terms of who will be the better player. Yeah, so Josh Doig completes our back four. So far in our team of the season, it is Craig Gordon in goal, James Tavernier at right back, John Suter is partnered by Jason Kerr, and at left back we have Josh Doig. We will be revealing the second half of our team of the season in our New Year's Eve special, which will be coming up next week. But, gentlemen, as it is Christmas Eve, it is time for us to reveal our Santa list for our clubs. Glenn, you're going to do Aberdeen. Dave, you're going to give us a bit of Aberdeen Dundee since you've been really pally with the boys at Dundee this season, and I'll give a Celtic Christmas list. You know what, Dave? I'll let you go first. You've got two teams to split your Christmas list between.
I'll be short and sweet because we're 30 minutes in. Aberdeen, there's possible talk about Jamie McGrath coming in. That would be a very good acquisition for Stephen Glass. Also, from an Aberdeen persuasion, a better consistency of results. As we're recording, a disappointing result at Easter Road last night. So that's 13 defeats and 26, if I'm not mistaken. So we need a better run of results as far as Aberdeen fans are concerned. So that's the Aberdeen side. Dundee, probably a bit more consistency in regards to overall discipline within the club. Obviously, Jason Cummings and Charlie Allen had their misdemeanors over the last week. So there's that. And also probably better recruitment from James Pickett in January, and he needs back by the Dundee hierarchy. And Dundee United probably need acquisitions as well because they got off to a really good start, but they're slowly but surely dwindling down, and Tom Coates needs some signs in. So that's my three just to round off the Christmas wish list.
Glenn, what about yourself and the boys in the North East?
Well, I'm going to keep it a lot short and sweeter than Dave and just say on my wish list is the Scottish Cup.
Whoa, that would be a big one. Would that be the reward that Stephen Glass has earned this season?
I don't know if he'd earn it, but it would certainly take a lot of the pressure and quieten a lot of the noise that is, Dave just highlighted there, the poor run of form has been on. At the end of the day, if you bring success and silverware, what's done in the league, as long as we don't capitulate and get relegated, that will all be forgotten about.
Well, in terms of Celtic, my wish list is to bring in all those players that we've been linked with over the last number of weeks in before the league resumes on January 17th. For Tom Rogic to sign a new extended deal. He only has 18 months left. Sorry, Glenn, I know that hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think in general for all of Scottish football, for full houses to return as soon as is safely possible. So let us know what your thoughts are on our team of the year so far. Let us know who would make your team of the year in the comments section below. If you haven't already, subscribe to A State of Mind on YouTube, where you'll see us on Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock. On behalf of myself, on David, and everyone here at the State of Scottish Football, we wish you all a very happy and a very safe Christmas, and we will see you all before the year is out. Take care.